You have been in Pyongyang for 6 years. This is not something most people can say. The number of foreigners permitted to live and work in North Korea on an extended basis is small enough that you all know each other. By name, by nationality, by the specific reason each of you is there. You are an agricultural engineer, 37 years old, Dutch. You work for a UN food security program analyzing soil, optimizing crop yields, building irrigation infrastructure in provinces where the gap between what the government says the harvest is and what the harvest actually is could feed a city if someone were allowed to say it out loud. Nobody is allowed to say it out loud. You live in the Munsu district in a building for foreign residents. The building has a minder. All foreign buildings have minders. Yours is a man named Choi, 51, compact, precise. He speaks English like he learned it from literature, which means his vocabulary is extraordinary and his idioms are slightly wrong in a way that is endearing rather than alienating. He once described a colleague's presentation as verbose and pedestrian in the same sentence, and the colleague took it as a compliment because the colleague didn't know what verbose meant. You have known Choi for 4 years. He is the reason you stayed, not officially, not in any paperwork, but in the real architecture of why a person remains in a difficult place. Choi is load-bearing. He told you in year 2 that the farmer obstructing your work wasn't hostile, he was afraid. He told you in year 3 that your program's withdrawal would cost farmers in 3 provinces who had started planting differently based on your recommendations. He came to your apartment on a Tuesday in December in year 5 with a bottle of something technically not allowed and sat at your kitchen table for 3 hours and talked about his daughter studying mathematics and his wife's soup and his own loneliness, which he described as a condition of the work. You trusted Choi the way you trust a structure that has held weight for years without failing. This is the sentence that will take you the longest to dismantle. Her name is Park Soo-jin, 24, an interpreter at the Foreign Resident Liaison Office. You have interacted with her a dozen times in 2 years, brief, professional, administrative. She exists in the background of your work life, the way furniture exists in a room. On a Wednesday in October, you attend the monthly reception at the Foreign Resident Center. Mandatory, in the way things in North Korea are mandatory, which is to say the word is never used, but the consequences of absence are understood. You stand with a glass of juice and talk to a Swedish diplomat about soil pH. Park Soo-jin is there. She translates 4 minutes of conversation between you and a government official. You go home at 9. You eat. You sleep. At 6:14 the next morning, 4 men come through your door, not knocking, through. The door is unlocked from the outside, with a key only the building management has. The men are in civilian clothes, but carry themselves with the posture of people for whom civilian clothes are a costume. They tell you to dress. You ask why. They tell you to dress again. Inside a building you have never been to despite 6 years in this city, a man in a uniform tells you that Park Soo-jin has filed a complaint. She alleges that following the reception, you followed her to the building exit and assaulted her. The interpreter translates this with the careful neutrality of someone who understands that the words they are translating have consequences. You say that is not what happened. The man in the uniform writes something. You say you spoke to her for 4 minutes and went home. The man in the uniform writes something else. You ask to contact your embassy. He says the investigation is ongoing. They put you in a room with a bed and a window and a lock on the outside. The window shows an empty courtyard. The sky above the courtyard is the specific gray of a North Korean morning you have watched for 6 years, and that looks entirely different from the inside of a locked room than it ever did from outside one. You think about Choi. Choi will know by now. The building minder always knows. And Choi is better at his job than most, which means Choi knew before 6:14 this morning, which means Choi knew while you were sleeping. You set this thought aside because it is too heavy to carry without more information. Your embassy is notified on day 3. Not by you, by the Dutch Foreign Ministry, notified by the UN, notified by your program director in Geneva who noticed 2 missed check-in calls and escalated with the speed of someone who knows that missed check-in calls in difficult countries are not technical issues. A consular officer named Vanderberg arrives on day 5, gray-haired, neutral expression. He tells you the situation is serious. He tells you the North Korean criminal process for foreigners does not include the protections that would apply in countries that have signed frameworks North Korea hasn't signed. He tells you the program has been suspended pending investigation. 5 provinces, 17 active projects, spring planting cycle 6 weeks out, all of it suspended. He tells you he is working on it. He visits every 4 days. He brings nothing. He is not permitted to bring anything. He brings information and the comfort of a Dutch accent in a room full of Korean, which is a comfort so small it should mean nothing and means everything. On day 11, you ask if he has spoken to Choi. Vanderberg's neutral expression holds for 2 seconds before he reassembles it. He says Choi has been reassigned. You ask when. He says the morning of the 15th. The morning of the 15th is the morning 4 men came through your door with a key from the building management. Choi's reassignment and your arrest were processed simultaneously by the same machinery, which means Choi was not reassigned. Choi was removed. Removed from your proximity before you could reach him and before he could reach you. You think about 4 years, the kitchen table, the bottle technically not allowed, the conversation about his daughter and his wife's soup, and loneliness as a condition of the work. You think about the farmer in Hwanghae province, and the report you wrote, and the program that wasn't withdrawn. You think about trust as a structure that has held weight for years without failing. You think about the morning of the 15th. On day 19, Vanderberg comes with a different expression, a third one you haven't seen before, and which you understand before he speaks, contains information that changes the geometry of the room. He says he has information from a source he cannot name. He says Park Soo-jin did not file the complaint voluntarily. 6 weeks before the reception, officers from the State Security Department approached her. They told her that her brother, detained for 3 months on political charges, would be released if she cooperated. Cooperating meant attending the reception, interacting with you in a documented way, and filing a complaint, using details that had been prepared for her in advance. The document she signed was drafted before the evening of the 14th. You think about 4 minutes. You said hello. She translated. She was doing her job. She was doing 2 jobs simultaneously and had no way to tell you which one she was doing, because telling you was a door she couldn't open without her brother walking through a different kind of door. Vanderberg says Park Soo-jin's brother was not released. He says this the way careful people say things that are true and terrible. The brother was transferred to a facility in the north 2 weeks before the reception, before she completed her cooperation. The release was never the actual arrangement. She paid the full price for something they never intended to give her. You ask why you. Vanderberg says your program had been producing data about crop yield gaps that contradicted official agricultural output figures. Not slightly, significantly. The kind of contradiction that, if formally presented to the UN, would affect aid calculations, budget allocations, and the government's ability to maintain a fiction about agricultural self-sufficiency it had been maintaining for 11 years. Removing you through an administrative channel would produce questions nobody wanted to answer. A criminal allegation produces a different sequence. The investigation suspends the program immediately. The program director in Geneva makes decisions about sustainability. The program ends, not because it was expelled, but because it became untenable. An expelled program is a story. An untenable program is an administrative outcome. You were never the target. You were the mechanism. Vanderberg says one more thing. He says Choi filed the original report that identified your data as problematic 2 years ago. The report that flagged your crop yield analysis as contradicting official figures was filed by Choi and sent to the State Security Department through a channel that bypasses the liaison office. 2 years ago. You think about 2 years ago. Year 5. Tuesday in December. The bottle, technically not allowed. The kitchen table. 3 hours. His daughter. His wife's soup. Loneliness as a condition of the work. He filed the report before he knocked on your door. He sat at your kitchen table after filing the report. He looked you in the eye after filing the report. You think about what it costs a person to do that. You think maybe it costs nothing if you have been doing it long enough. You think maybe it costs everything, and Choi pays it every time, and this is the real meaning of loneliness as a condition of the work. You don't know which one is true. You will never know which one is true. And the not knowing is the part that will take the longest. Day 47. A deal is reached. You will be expelled rather than prosecuted. The expulsion framed as a mutual decision to conclude your program. Your name will not appear in any public record connected to the allegation. The program ends formally. You leave. Vanderburg tells you it is the best outcome available. You understand that best outcome available means the alternatives were worse, and this one lets you go home. You go home on a gray Tuesday morning. The airport, the flags, the gray, intentional aesthetic of a country that has decided grayness is a statement. The city moves past the car window in the specific way it has moved past you for 6 years, and that you are seeing for the last time without being able to look at it the way you looked at it yesterday, because yesterday you didn't know it was the last time. Vanderburg shakes your hand at the gate. He says you conducted yourself with exceptional dignity throughout the process. This is the highest compliment in the vocabulary of Dutch consular officers. It lands somewhere in your chest, where you don't immediately examine it. You board the plane. The plane lifts. Below you, North Korea flattens into geography. The Munsu district, the building, the kitchen table. Somewhere below you in 3 provinces, farmers who planted differently because you told them something true about their soil are 6 weeks from a spring planting cycle with no infrastructure support and no explanation for why the person who told them something true about their soil is no longer there. Somewhere below you, Park Soo-jin is at her desk, or not at her desk, living a life that now has your name in it in a way she didn't choose and can't remove. Somewhere below you, Choi is at a new building with a new foreign resident, knocking on a door on a Tuesday evening with a bottle of something technically not allowed, sitting at a kitchen table, describing his loneliness as a condition of the work. The cloud closes over North Korea. You open your laptop. The data from 5 provinces is backed up on a server outside the country. You did this 6 months ago because you were thorough. You did not do it because you knew you would need it. You did it because your father called thoroughness the only honest form of intelligence, and you believed him. You begin writing the report, not for the program, for the record. The formal, documented account of what the soil in those provinces actually is, and what the gap between that and the official figures means for how hunger is counted, and how aid is allocated, and how a government maintains a fiction about feeding its people while the people plant in soil that cannot produce what the fiction requires. You write for 4 hours. The cloud below is solid and white. Somewhere underneath it, the soil is exactly what you measured. The report will say so. That is the only thing left that is entirely yours to give. You keep writing.